we go. So welcome everyone. Supposedly a whole lot more people are going to join, but they can always watch back the recording. So the goal of this group is to make compliance easy. So there's lots of people here that come from very many different companies and backgrounds of different levels of expertise. And we're just here to share our experiences with each other and help each other do their job better or have more fun while doing it. And we can discuss best practices and other things. There are also various resources available for those who are not in there. Open Regulatory has a great Slack group with lots of people in there. Only unreadable, then maybe let me share the slides with
pretty much
with Leon.
Small text.
Share the link with Leon. Next slide, Leon. So as I was saying, the Open Regulatory Slack group is a great resource. There are like, I think, over 900 or even over 1,000 colleagues in there who you can, especially in the questions channel, just ask any questions, and your peers will jump in and try their best to help each other, and you can ask for reviews about your notified body or any other things you could possibly need help with. We're also uploading these videos to YouTube afterwards, so people can watch the presentations back at least. And as you can see, this meetup is well liked. So let's make sure that tonight is also going to be good. You go to the next slide, Leon. So tonight we have 3 speakers. We have Erik de Zeeuw to talk about an AI-driven gap analysis tool. We have Miguel Amador of Complear to talk about AI in eQMS and technical documentation. And Leon Doorn, who will talk about, well, not what it says here, but tool validation in the era of AI, which I think will tie in nicely with the other 2 sessions. And Leon is sharing the link in the chat where you can sign up for the Open Regulatory Slack group. Then the floor is yours, Erik. You can share your screen.
Awesome, thank you. Let me share my screen. It should be visible now, I think.
Yep.
So thanks for the invite as well. So I'm Erik. My background is in product design. I've worked for several startups over the last 10, 15 years in both the and the US. And I got slowly weaned into the QA space by Evo. So for me, it's a very new space, but exciting because I think we can find a lot of suitable applications for this, relatively speaking, new technology, which can help being more effective or more efficient, or at least have more fun in the experience as well. So we built a tool called AI Gap Analysis. First, today I'll do a brief walkthrough of sort of the AI space and like what and for people that are not well versed in sort of AI can use all these various LLMs for. Then I'll do a demo of what we built and how we think that we hopefully can make especially your life easier. I'll conclude and then obviously open for a bunch of questions, feedback, comments, whatever. So some use cases. So as you are probably well aware, there's 30 people on the call. I know at least some of them have tried ChatGPT Copilot or one of the other chat providers in their private life or in their work. And these models are very, or these providers are very handy, very powerful, and can help you a ton. Also in the Q space. But there are limitations. So let me first talk about some use cases that you can actually enable them for, but also the limitations that accompany these use cases and where you should be mindful of, and where obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be here as well. I think hopefully we do a better job of AI gap analysis. All right, so really cookie cutter case, but you can just ask it to explain a specific clause. Be mindful that it's a public clause, that you turn web search on, that it knows what you're talking about and doesn't use its own knowledge base in the model to give you the answer, because it might start hallucinating, or it might provide you information that is dated, because these models are not continuing learning. They're set at a specific date, and then they're trained a little bit on top of that. But be mindful that you might get all the information. Regardless, if you turn web search on and you ask it for a simple query like this, so I explain ISO 245 and a specific clause, you will probably get a really good reply. Again, it also differentiates which model you use here. So if you use an instant model, in this case from OpenAI, or if you use the latest model from Claude or the latest model from Gemini, you might get vastly different answers and also vastly different quality in the answers. So this is already, I think, one of the pitfalls. There's an abundance of choice in between these providers and the models that they provide. And there are really important nuances in between which model you pick and choose for which job and the results you will get. You can ask it to draft templates. So ask it for a document or draft. It could even create a file for you next. You can download this file and use this as a draft. Obviously, again, pretty copy paste, but I think very powerful regardless, especially if you provided right context or maybe even previous templates that you've made, then it can generate a really accurate new template that you can use and verify. Or you can ask it to summarize information. So a lot of people use it for this use case as well. Be mindful here again that these models have a limited context space. If you're not aware of what context is, no worries at all, but think of it like short-term memory. So if you put too much information in the context, then one, it will lose sort of the information at the start, and it will also be distracted. So case in point, if you, in this case, the context space is measured in tokens. Again, do not know what tokens are, no worries. Think of them as words. But if you put in the entire, in this case, the MDR, and measure the tokens, it's already 135,000 tokens. And all but one model of OpenAI allows you that in the entire space. So if you put all that context in, it will, one, not see the entire thing, two, start to hallucinate, and three, be distracted by all that information in the system. So that's also, like, it's a good use case, but again, be mindful, and again, make sure the information is publicly available, or provide your own, but don't provide too much. So these are already, you can see that there's already a lot of these in use, and also a lot of things you need to know. If you're not paying, you have less context space. If you're paying, you have a little bit more. If you're in the pro tier, then you again have a little bit more, but they don't reference this in the UI. So it can be quite confusing, and you might be you might experience it. So that was already a bit leading into the break. So what are they not good for? And thank you, Leon, for this quote, because I stole it from one of your recent articles. But AI can strengthen the regulatory compliance and expand human capability, but only if the organizations maintain rigorous oversight, preserve the expertise required to govern these systems effectively. And I think, like the previous use cases in the breaks I already mentioned, are evidence that becomes very hard to do in these chat providers, at the very least. So there's no system. So these models are very capable, but they provide long-winded responses, especially if it's a bit of an abstract topic. You basically lose yourself, or you're drowned in all the text that you get back. If you multiply that about all the various clauses, all the various standards, and all the various documents that you'll have an abundance of chats with all these long texts that you then need to search through, or maybe even share with a colleague, and you'll probably lose the plot. There's weak traceability, so they can reference files, but if you then click the file, then you get a download of the file, but you won't be linked into the file and like on the right paragraph that they've used as a reference. So you always need to verify, open the PDF, search through the PDF. And again, these systems are not built for this particular use case of managing a vast amount of data, and then also tracing back the results to specific files or maybe even specific paragraphs. As I think already alluded to, but chats do not scale. So especially if you start sharing this with a team, if you dump in a bunch of documents, there's no easy file tree, no easy search. If you upload the same file twice, you're not alerted of that fact. If you say you make some change to the file, you need to search it, delete it, and then all your previous chats that have used that file basically become void because you can't really rely on them anymore. Again, these systems are not built for this specific use case. They're great in like more simple applications, but for these complexer applications, they are severely lacking. And all this friction starts to pile up. And then what you notice that a lot of people try out these systems, but then get adverse results, are basically not happy with the results, and then say, okay, no, AI is shit or something. Whereas the models are very powerful, but you have to give them the right harness or the right tools, basically, and put them in the right structure so that you can really get the most out of them, and that they become more of a helper than a nuisance, basically. All right. So what do we think then that the right structure, the right harness looks like? So let's go over then to the demo of AI gap analysis. So CORE in this case, it's very early days. We're still very much experimenting and learning and having tight relations with our current user set, who are mainly either working in the QARA space at the client, or are a consultant, like for example, and then use this tool for some of their clients to hopefully be more effective, more efficient, but also get a better end result. So what does it look like? So we've got our gap analysis here, and obviously to be able to do an analysis, we need access to documents. These are always sensitive documents, so we take security and privacy very seriously. We do not use AI to train on your data. We cannot access the documents. Documents are encrypted. If you delete something, it's gone forever. So just to get that sort of out of the way. But then regardless, we do need access to these documents to be able to help you and provide value, basically. So based on the current clients, we've now made it easy to import documents through Confluence, Google Drive, or Matrix. But obviously, you can also just upload the document directly just by dragging and dropping it in. You can optionally assign it to a group if you want. This is for your own structure, but it could also later on help the AI in sort of in guiding it into the right direction. You can upload many files in a go, and you can upload a lot of different file types as well. So once you upload them, then after they've been uploaded, we will process them using various AI techniques. So if there are images in a file, we'll use vision models to analyze those images. And if you see a Pay can handle 1 million tokens, and agreed, Gemini Pay can. So that's good. If you're already using that, great. But you will still run into limitations. And there's on sites that there's a really great benchmark that you can search for that's called needle in the haystack. And what you'll see is that the more tokens you dump in, even in these models that support 1 million tokens, the less they will remember in the end. So yes, they do support 1 million tokens, but the output and the quality of the output will vastly degrade the more you put in, even with these models that do support. So be mindful. It's great that they do, but be mindful. And so if you drop in a document, we'll process it, we'll analyze it, we'll extract some data, we'll summarize, and then once that's been done, we'll send you an email that has been done, so you don't have to wait in the system for that. And you can obviously open up the document, scroll through the original, read the summary that you want, but the main use case that we then obviously want to tackle is a gap analysis. So you can create a new gap analysis, and you can then upload your standards, and then select one. We'll structure them in a specific way. So in this case, I can create a new ISO 13485, and I'll give it today's date. I can give a description. I can limit it to a specific group if I want, and then I can create the analysis. So now you've got each and every clause here is a line in the table, and that's really relevant because we'll run all these clauses in parallel when we actually do the gap analysis. And this is also why I've been hammering on and on about sort of the context length, because we really focus and enable the AI to only look at a specific piece of the puzzle at the given time, but still be able to search or find all the relevant context that it needs to be able to answer this question, also across documents or across other answers. So, great question, Leon. No, it's still a bit messy, but good feedback. So we can now process this analysis. I won't do it in this demo. I don't have the time for that. Sorry, Eva. I will fix it. I promise you. And so we can now process the gap analysis. I won't do it in this demo because it takes anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes, kind of depending on which standard or regulation you're running or how many documents you have. And so I'll just go to one that's been completed. And again, you don't have to wait into the system to await the results. We'll send you an email once it's done. And in that email, we'll also send a sort of a high-level executive summary so that you can already sort of get a feeling for how you've performed this specific analysis. In this case, not great. So in this case, we did it on 34 clauses. 6 were fully met, but 28 were assessed as gaps here. So we'll provide you with a dashboard. But the real value is in the details here. You can sort by severity. So we've now recently introduced a severity score here, which is also manageable by yourself in your organization settings. You can determine this and sort of guide the AI into the right direction. But if I open up one of these clauses that has a gap, and you can then read the full clause and what has been analyzed here. But obviously the important part, and only a little bit here because it can be a bit small, is the answer the AI gave. And in this case, that it has flagged the gap. So it has no located evidence of a controlled product requirement specific. And it also makes a recommendation on how to mitigate the gap. So how to become compliant with this specific clause. But more importantly, and this is also why I was hammering on and on about traceability, our AI then returns evidence, and not only on a document level, but it returns relevant quotes. And obviously you can click open the relevant page, see the document on the relevant page immediately, and then verify that you agree with the findings of the AI, or that you maybe disagree with the findings, and then be able to edit the answer or the structure yourself. So far, the sounds have been very positive, and on our own evaluation sets also very positive in the gaps that we're finding. It's not perfect yet, but that's also where you then as an expert comes in and be the nuance that it needs in getting to a great result. So this is sort of the main use case that we cover, which is the gap analysis. But then next to that, once we have access to these documents and we have analyzed them with AI, we can also do other things with them. So we make it very easy to search through all these various documents, not only by keyword, but also by similarity. And it's most of the time a lot faster than opening up a 10 PDF, or if you're using Google Drive, for example, as a QMS, a lot more accurate than that as well. As I said, these check systems are still very powerful and still very useful. So we've got our own variant here as well. But since we now have access to all these documents in a structured manner, and our AI and our AI pipeline can search through all these documents in a structured manner, we made it very easy to then chat with these documents. You can ask these questions like, hey, summarize at doc 35 for me. And then it does so because it has access to all that data here. So that's basically what we now do in a nutshell. We also make it very easy to manage multiple organizations and manage your members, and indeed tweak and tune the AI to your liking. And I'm glad that you found the answer in the large token link. So thank you for the addition there. All right. I think to summarize here, so we think that this makes a lot more of a pleasurable, but also more an effective method of using AI in this space by using AI gap analysis and not one of these more generic products that are still capable. And we think we provide a much better, not only user experience, but also a much better outcome here. So we link evidence by design. We have a reusable clause-by-clause structure. It's a safer place because if you're using these models or these providers for free, then your data will probably be trained upon. And it's easy to review and to share with your colleagues and to use this as sort of your base of operations to becoming more compliant, basically. So I think in conclusion, sort of the summary here is you use the right tool for the right job. You've got your generic chip providers. Those are great, but I think AI gap analysis is a really nice position here together with the human expert to be able to come to a better end product, basically. So what's next for us? And I think we'll be releasing this, and I'll probably a bit too soon, but I think in the next couple of weeks, hopefully we'll release the first version of this, which is our regulatory intelligence feature. So that takes the AI gap analysis one step further. And what we want to do with this is that you can subscribe to specific sources that you deem relevant for specific products. And then we'll check these sources each and every day. We'll analyze if they're relevant for you as an organization or for specific devices that you have as an organization. We will, Leon. Thank you. So if they're relevant for, if Leon send me a message with which sources you want, then I'll make sure those are in the first version. So, and then if a new version comes in, we'll do an analysis straight away, and then we'll send you an email. So you don't have to go manage your RSS feed or manage all these various LinkedIn people didn't follow, but hopefully that our system can take care of that and immediately link to the relevant documents and also to the gaps that might occur in these newer versions that come out. So especially for, I think for global teams and for bigger region teams, this can be very handy. I see you open up the chat. How does the system handle negative constraints, for example, if a regulatory clause requires a specific exclusion that isn't in my document? Will the AI explicitly flag? Yes. No, so we will explicitly flag missing documents, and we do cross-documents checks as well. So say, for example, as something is referenced in Doc 35, and then links or points to this is mentioned in Doc 90, then the AI is smart enough to then go read Doc 90 and find that specific paragraph, and then dig in there to for the right evidence. I think Ivo, one thing is find the evidence, go hunt for the evidence. I think Ivo, you had a bit more rudimentary term for it, but I'll leave that between us. But we're very evidence-minded, and yes, we do explicitly also flag sort of negative constraints. So thanks for the question, Amador.
And even if you have like a clause that is very long and like in the middle of the sentence they mention, you should mention statistical technique, then the AI will pick that up and point out that your procedures don't address these things. Whether or not you think you have to do something with it is up to you, but at least it tries to not just gloss over some of these details.
Yeah. All right. So now it's time for a cuttlefish. Also asked a question. So in terms of how do you think about in the future, price changes resulting in accessibility for specific models and interoperability between models, or model quality resulting in different gap analysis? So I think great question with several answers. I think what we want to end up doing, but again, as I mentioned earlier, it's very early days for us as well, is provide more and more control to our users with some handholding. So you'll be able to choose the model providers, but also maybe tune it on your liking. So your tone of voice, you'll be able to add specific context to specific standards, the way you operate and you do your business. And then in regards to sort of the price changes, I think those are for us more to worry about. And as I think the majority of the people here know, a lot of these larger models are now funded by fee dollars. So we'll have to see how the dust settles. But I think we can make it work even with smaller models. Miguel, do you rely on sole model provider mix? It's a mix of models. So we use Mistral for some, and we use OpenAI models for another. And then we are now also experimenting with some Gemini models as well. So it's a mixture. We try to run several models also in parallel and then have a judge model. So we've got various different sort of techniques that we try to get to the best result as possible. Thank you. The next question from Amador again. Does the workflow require a human to attest to every AI-generated link before it's finalized in a technical file? And is the reviewer ID and timestamp captured in the audit log? So that's a very specific question already. So right now, we do not create a report. It's very easy to export your data or copy paste your data and go into chat with one of these model providers, but to then create a report. So right now, what you see is what you get, and you can then edit your answer or your version of the answer if you want, or let the AI do that for you. But nothing's very set in stone. I hope that answers the question. Question from Diana. Do you have any integrations? If I'm running long, just feel free to cut me off and mute me, by the way. Do you have any integrations? So right now we make it easy to import sources into the document. And no other integrations, but I'd love to hear from you what you're looking for or what you might be missing, and then I'd love to build it for you. So hit me up if you feel free to add me on LinkedIn and send your ideas. And indeed, what Ivo said, nowadays you can build your own integration. So you can, I think, vibe coding with Codex or Cloud Code, you can come to a long way of building your own APIs. So nice. Okay. And any other questions from the audience this evening? About data protection, docs will often contain IP. And what I said is, like, we take data security very seriously. We're not certified yet. It's very early days for us. So we will go through the procedures, hopefully in the next quarter, maybe quarter. There is now sort of a sense of trust. But hopefully we can mitigate that sooner rather than later. Amador, when a new MDCG guidance is released, how is that integrated into the source of truth the AI uses? Is it a reg retrieval approach where I can see the new library, or do I have to wait for models to retrain? It's various different retrieval methods. So it's both vector and also search. We don't have to wait for models to retrain. So we're using off-the-shelf models, augmenting them ourselves, but no need to wait for retrain. But good question.
Thank you, Eric, for your great presentation and all the lovely Q&A that's going on. Miguel, up next.
Thank you so much, and thank you. If you have any other further questions, feel free to add me on LinkedIn, and then I'll go into discussion. Good luck. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, so let me jump. I just want to open a website that for me frames a bit. I'll introduce a bit what we're looking at. So we are a company focused on how we build the agentic world for compliance in the future, as we see AI models being quite helpful, and we as a consultant also we work daily with AI tools for daily work. But I honestly believe that we are still a bit far from what is needed for a true quality and compliance driven by AI. And when I say driven by AI, it's because a lot of the things we still focus is how we build documentation and how we work with documentation. And that is the human world, not the AI world. And I just wanted to share, be a bit provocative on opening the page of Striker. That's for those that are following the news today, was had a big issue on cybersecurity level, and they have 120 cybersecurity certifications all across different things. And when I bring these, is an example of what is being challenged as Complear. So I'll not be here making a big demo, because we are still at the research level in many of these kind of things that we are doing. That is how we build AI that we can trust, and how can we move beyond what is document compliance, right? And I love to bring this because, like, I know many of you also work with the 27.1 for instance. Like it means nothing probably in the back end, if it's really secure, if things are really being in place or not. And how can we move to a world when really AI is ensuring the compliance of our products, of our systems, and this is a lot of what motivates the work that we are doing at Com. So let me just bring you back to my presentation, but I want to be a bit provocative, giving the topic, as I think a lot of the things that we tend to speak about compliance is a bit okay, how we make better documents, on how we make sure the documents say the right things. And that for me is quite a low hanging fruit for AI, and is quite far from the potential of what is AI powered quality management system. This is a bit of this that I'm bringing you a bit some food for thought. So I think a bit more perspectives of what can be done, or what is being done, and what is in our perspective a quality management system powered by AI. And when I say powered by AI, is as simple as what I'm doing here, presenting to you. At the same time, I have an AI model making a full feature that I need for some platform that will take 3 months or 4 months of a developer back in the days, and today I'm trusting that he's developing something that I can trust and deploy. And it's an example where we see AI being deployed in many areas, in a agentic level, automated level, but I don't see as trusting AI at the point that we can really take the human, not from the loop, but taking the human from the review of every step in the end. And that still will be a bottleneck. Being from the healthcare side, and many of you, I believe that you may be working on AI in healthcare, or quite familiar with the topic, the amount of evidence that show AI scribers do not work, AI diagnostic tools do not work, not because they do not perform well, but because the human plus the AI, they are not faster, they are not many of the time more accurate, because when you combine humans with AI, that's where things becomes quite problematic. I think we still don't have self-driving cars all around the world, not because the cars are not able to drive themselves better than humans, but because they need to deal with humans driving alongside them. And this is a bit of the challenge when we build a quality management system, because a quality management system is about people, is about what we do, and how you bring AI into those processes become a challenge. So a bit on background on my side. So biomedical engineer, being the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer for Complear. As I mentioned, we start as a consultancy. We are productizing and developing agentic quality management systems. Not an easy task to go from what is the deployment of AI tools into what is the truly agentic perspective. But working with startups for many years in the space of digital health. And when we look a bit on what I always like to start on this, on the digitalization of things, is that when we look a lot of the initial generations of eQMSs, and when we look about digitalizations, are we digitalizing or digitizing? And there is always this kind of challenge. That's why I start with the point of the documents, that we are building many of the times on top of the world that was made as a communication tool between humans, and AI performs nicely there. I think what generative AI brought to us was the ability to AI to interact with a nasty and structured data that we put on language. So our structured language model, let's just say, allowing code to interact with that, it was with generative AI. That's why what Eric just presented is today possible, when probably 5 years ago, how could we just manage this unstructured data in a way that could be actionable or not? But many of the challenges is how we move from what is really the shift of AI powered intelligence that has a lot to do on like actually can we act. And again, I'm speaking about quality management systems, so systems, process, how we have things running more than just the documentation parts, and how we can move into this active prediction, how we can really not only understand that something is missing on the document, but probably that process is not well implemented because the way it's being described, or how the records were all added at 23:59 of the day before of the audit, probably signals that indeed those processes are not being in place. This is not only important for an auditor, but even for inside a company to be able to monitor how these things are being really put in place or not. So AI bring us a lot of this capacity to move into what is more deterministic systems to what is a more probabilistic system. So we start having opinions and they become to our peers more just a source of information, because they while we are speaking about the context, right, being a limitation for a specific query, the reality is that we can deploy AI models in a way they have more context of anything that is happening in our company, in our product, and our QMS than any other colleagues can have. So it becomes a fundamental colleague if we understand that at the same time is a compulsive liar by design. So we need to understand that. So he knows probably everything. He just is pushed to say some things that he thinks you want to listen. So it becomes kind of challenge of how you design systems where you have probably a person that knows it all, but at the same time a person that you cannot trust at all, and becomes a kind of challenging our own systems where we rely a lot on the trust. So and a lot as an auditor, when we do an audit of a company, we often rely a bit on this trust level. Okay, do the patterns of things that these people are doing really create a sense of trust that the process that are running are actually doing? So we are looking some of the times not just of missing words on the text, but missing behaviors that may represent things that we want to go deeper. But yeah, moving forward, I think an important thing on our rules is that the people that are not using the AR gap, they are just getting screwed because the notified bodies and regulators are starting to using these exact tools, and it's interesting discussion going on that's while until now a lot of the conformity assessment was done based on a bit of a sampling, so this kind of perspective that you look to different things, it was the experience of an auditor, okay, from the full context of things that I have in my plate, what things I'll be focusing on or not. Now you have this colleague of the auditor that can process the full context, flag a lot of things. And the good thing for an auditor is that he can give false positives. That's not the issue, because then the auditor will mostly check on those false positives and go down. Because the reality today is an auditor already has a lot of false negatives. So that we are all comfortable with that. So there's a lot of things that we know that passed on an audit, but because nobody look into that. So that is not what you're trying to overcome. The issue is the false positives. That now the auditor can look into things with a high degree of probability that are positive. So imagine that if you are not pre-testing your tool with tools like AirGap, you'll be screwed, because in the other side, notified bodies are adopting the same kind of approaches, same kind of technologies, and scaling this at a point that you'll start getting things that probably 2 years ago you could pass an audit without any issues, and today you need really to be ready for all the details, because on the other sides there are tools to do so. So we need to understand that we are not in a world only that is how we use AI to create documents. Is also a world why we are creating documents for someone use AI to read those documents. That's why I truly believe that a world without documents will be a feature of quality management systems. But while we have this, we need to understand that AI is being used by both sides. So when we speak about generative AI, again, we are transforming a lot of what is documentation from a burden to a strategic asset. So it means that when we create a document or a procedure, it's more important that the procedure is that it represents a set of ways the AI can operate on things, and how we can look to what we are doing. So it means that a lot of the things that often we overlook, that's okay, how we optimize that procedure for compliance, how we ensure that we may have different procedures for different people with different background, because in the end they may deliver the same audits, but we can personalize even the process to the people that are working on those at a scale that probably last year didn't make sense, but today we can move into this what is almost a real-time regulatory gap analysis also, and we move a lot the challenge that we may not be the ones writing a procedure, so we expect the AI to deliver on the best process, the best procedure for that purpose, because he knows probably better than we do the requirements that you need to follow. He knows probably more about the context. So it becomes a lot on how we validate not the text output, but the process, and be part of this human oversight of the full process. The same way that a senior regulatory person may not be looking to the details of all the procedures in a big company, relying on probably more junior people that probably can hallucinate as well as an AI. So we are not bulletproof. So the human in the loop are not the burden of the full knowledge, and how we build this kind of collaboration becomes a challenge, and is where a lot of my concerns live with in these fields, because I want AI to let me grab caipirinhas by the beach in the summer, but the reality is that I'm still responsible for what it does, and that's where things becomes more complex. And how do I validate the process rather than the outputs, and how this becomes a new rule on the quality management system. So bringing some kind of concrete things, we already had an example from Eric of what is the legacy search that is quite cumbersome, and how you can jump into what is a semantic understanding of a document. So the simple thing that you can now find the document, not because it's written the specific word that you were expecting, and many of the times this leads to a lot of issues on the system, but it can actually look to the semantic relationship. So it goes to the documents that maybe not have the title that you expected, but probably has the information that you expect, and it helps you to synthesize and correlate a lot of information. So you can extract from feeds of information within the QMS actionable information that will take weeks before we did a QMS, and today you can quickly from flagging an issue on a customer complaint gets what could be a root cause analysis with proposed changes to the design of your device for you to review, done by AI agents in an automated way. So we need to think that for me is where AI can really excel and help us to bring quality, because then the documents is just a reporting of what is done. And this continuous performance is something that, imagine what is doing audit every day, so not just every year. And this for me is the beauty of things. But at the same time, we need to understand that these models still have a big challenge of drifting. So you can train them for specific sets of performance, but they will change, and their behavior will not be so stable. So it's not that kind of software that you don't touch during 20 years, because it's just issue the invoices. So why should I care about it? It just works. No, it may work today, but as the inputs or as the kind of challenges facing are evolving, it may change, and not just because it's getting more trained with new data. It's just because the real world data is shifting from what was trained for, and this become a challenge. That's why what model to use become a challenge. Like we see this with Gemini, for instance, that was working quite well in December, and now in January it starts degrading his performance in a different way. So imagine building a full system around that, while it's hard to ensure that the model fits well. So that's why we really, and a lot of what we're doing at Complear is how we structure most of the data. So build these digital twins in the medtech world. So how can we really give to AI a world that is not just based on the documentation, but based on something that where the constraints are not just tied by language, but tied by logic, and builds with these safe environments when AI can play and work with, and not so be exposed to hallucinations. Again, I already mentioned this kind of example on this audit trails and compliance burden that becomes intelligent assets. So in a nutshell, you can be fully compliant but still be at the major risk of doing things than the company that may have 50% of compliance then, because the kind of combinations of things, how things that were really working within your QMS is probably what drives the key risks. So AI help us to have a more risk-based approach into things. Less determine, less this is how everyone does, but being able to really deploy things at a level that, okay, this is what is relevant for us today at this moment. And this is a good example of the situation of a global war that we have today. And I say global because unless you are cut out from the internet, and inside of you are exposed to a cyber attack from what they call unknown country, so we don't even know which country is attacking, but you may be now at the risk that your procedures are not fit for purpose today, and they may have been fit for purpose by September, where the situation was quite different. And that's why I brought you this striker situation. It's not that they were not compliant, it's that probably their compliance today was not fit for purpose to the situation. And again, the point is how we do it moves much beyond what is autonomous actions. Is having really this beyond what the chatbot is really having some an AI that perceives their environment, plan multi-steps, that execute tasks, and we gladly have been seeing the evolution on these markets a lot in this direction. Like the first models that that I think most of us that were a bit pioneers worked, that were models that just give you an output based on the inputs that you had. Today, these models think by themselves, so are multi-agents. They orchestrate the agents within them. So when you speak with Gemini, when we speak with Claudes, they expose you a bit of their thinking, but they do the thinking on themselves. So are multiple engines doing things. Of course, then we can expand to our combination of own agents and increase these kinds of capabilities. But that also brings us the difficulties of how we validate. If already hard to validate a single model, how you validate now a model that relies on different agents, and this combination of things becomes quite a complex aspect to guide. And this is where I think that we are a bit challenging, and again, and how we build these self-healing systems to enforce compliance automatically. A kind of perspective. And just to finish, I want to believe that a lot of the work of us working on quality is less than of an executor and will be more of an architect. So how can we really adapt and deploy these AI models, because it's not one size fits all that really fits our requirements and what we expect to have and work on the situation, and let probably a lot of the execution goes into the AI. So a lot of what I believe that is regulated digital systems is invisible quality. So the quality is not is less reactive, is less predictive, is more preventive, and is where I see that AI is going, and we are still in the early infancy. So what AI can do, but there's a lot of things that it will evolve in that direction. So that's my bits of food for thought of what is AI on a quality management system. So not just how we use it in a practical way, but what we can build, like building a car, not faster horses, right? And it's always a challenge for us as professionals, how we put us out of the loop where we shouldn't be.
Yeah, Miguel, nice slide deck. Do you foresee the future as being machine-to-machine communication, for example, in reviews from on the body?
I think we'll not be far, probably not in Europe with notified bodies, but we will not be far to see what will be a discussion if a machine-to-machine compliance will be more safe than a human-to-human, because in the end it's all about safety. So if you probably audit you probably will certify the AI deployed within these manufacturers to make sure that those AI are trustworthy. But then you let them speak with each other, and you have FDA audits every day, and probably that is more safer than the animal or biannual or 10-year visit that happens. This is where probably I'll say 90% of the manufacturers of many devices implement their eQMS, is when they have, especially outside the US, when they have a letter from FDA, is when they create the eQMS. So that will be interesting. We'll see what does it mean. I expect not to have AI to AI, because if you have AI in one side and not in the other, you just will be a bottleneck for things to happen.
Are you already able to demonstrate any of this in an example, perhaps?
No, so a lot of what we are doing is more similar to what Eric showed, and the use of AI to orchestrate a lot of things. The part of agent, so we are really developing, we are moving the thinking of the models from the outside of the models to inside the models, because we need speeds on those kind of things. So it's where otherwise you're just polluting the contexts. And that's with the thinking of the models, and that's a big issue on this. And then there's a lot of how you plug in these things into the model. So now what we are finalizing is a knowledge graph where AI agents will be deployed within our platform, and then we'll jump into the more advanced things on AI. So it's not so easy, but going that size. I think there is a lot of good solutions doing AI deployment to the level that we can do today with documents and bring a lot of value. We are a bit more focused on being able to bring the next level, the next stage of things.
Right. Jose asked the question, what would be a process to validate a proactive continuous AI eQMS? Would you need a human in the loop for all the edits? It's a great segue to Leon's presentation after this, but
yeah, that's I think is a bit of the challenge, because if you keep the human in the loop, AI will not work. So either we have AI doing parts that we can trust, and how we make sure that those steps are really trustworthy for the AI, and we leave the others to be reviewed, or you'll just have AI creating a context for all little context window. Will just be the bottleneck of all of this.
All right. If there aren't any more questions, I suggest we move on to Leon's presentation. Thank you, Miguel.
It's working, right? All clear. So yeah, I actually didn't choose the topic myself, so it was a little bit of searching and trying to understand how to look at this. And judging the other presentations, actually I think it fits right well in. So it's more on the governance and the regulatory oversight for AI in quality and regulatory systems. And I tried to think about what I could put in. And I think if you look at ISO 145, maybe it's one of the best starts, right? And I think we're all known with the use of computer validation, but I still thought it makes sense to quickly repeat what it says here. So, and obviously we all know when you use computer software in the context of quality and management systems, you need to validate the tool. By the way, maybe a silly question, can I get rid of the little deck from the Google chat because it's blocking my view? There we go. And it says so that you need to validate software prior to its initial use, but also as appropriate after changes to the software or its application. And I think to your point, Miguel, especially the last point, and also to the question of Jose, right? After changes to such software or its application, when you talk about continuous learning systems, that might be tricky in the sense of, do you every time read the system, yes or no? How do you do that when it's on a continuous basis? It might not be as straightforward as it seems. And also the approach and activities associated with the software validation and revalidation, and they need to be proportionate to the risk associated with the use of the software. And I think some of the items that we talked about, if you look at what AI is doing with this AI tool, missing regulatory requirements can directly lead, in my opinion, to harm to the patient. And clearly, it's a question, right? If you misinterpret the law, does it mean that directly a device is unsafe? Probably not. If you miss a specific requirement, well, you have to understand that all the requirements that are put into legislation are there for a reason, are there to substantiate safety of the end product that goes to the patient. So to some extent, there is that direct risk. And in that sense, I think the level of validation that is required by ISO 145 for using systems like AI systems in the context of a quality management system can be quite complex. And obviously, you need to have records of such activities. And I would bet that a lot of the manufacturers nowadays probably already use AI systems. And probably, if I would check their records, you see very few tool validations for AI systems. And I know that all these AI systems, and for example, Jira, Notion, etc., they're also launching and embedding more and more of their AI functionalities. And I wonder how many of the manufacturers actually have done a proper assessment of those AI tools prior to starting to use them. So if we continue, you see that, and I'm not sure if people are aware, I'm surprised it got very little attention on LinkedIn and other locations, but the FDA recently updated their computer software assurance documentation for tool validation. So it was issued last February, so it's recently new. It's still there since last month. I think it was amended not that long ago. So the original one was published on September 24 to 2025, but also then it gained very little traction. But it does actually embed and require that the tools used in regulatory workflows and quality workflows, including AI and machine learning tools, actually require validation when they're used as part of the quality management system. I just moved my window. I just hear the beep. If there's a question, then just go ahead. Yes, otherwise I'll just continue. Maybe you can.
Sorry, the question is that if you could please share later the link of that guidance in the chat, because I did miss it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. It's right here. Let me just copy it over and put it in the chat straight away. Give me 1 second.
Thanks.
Here, there you go. Can I still go through it? This actually works a lot better. So, and then it says that software with intended use is considered to be used directly as part of production of quality management system. And then they talk about what actually is embedded within the guidance. And they say software intended for automating quality management system processes. And to some extent, I would argue that tools that we use to develop technical documentation, most quality systems will actually include technical documentation as part of the quality system, and the outcome of the quality system, so records of the quality management system, are embedded in this software validation guidance. So they pay attention for your devices that are going, well, for using AI tools, and when you're bringing devices onto the US market, is going to audit those and they're in on-site inspections. And examples that they call out for features that are considered high risk are, for example, tools with automated feedback from other processes steps without human awareness or review. So you can already see that they're going to scale these type of tools as high-risk tools, and for good reasons. And they even suggest that such tools, not necessarily calling out AI ML, but can produce instructions for use or labeling that's provided to patients or users. Well, if you start automating that type of documentation, expect FDA to be on top of it in their on-site audit, and you better have validated the tools you use. If you use an AI system, you just use Chat to improve the wording of your IFU. Better make sure that you're ready for FDA inspections. Any questions? No? Okay, I'll continue. Anna, you're not muted, so your sound came in, I guess. I'm gonna mute you. There we go. So high-risk software features, functions and operations manufacturers may choose to consider are, for example, using scripted testing or hybrid approaches of scripting testing and unscripted testing. So that's the new type of testing that FDA has embedded within their guidance. And they call out two types. So scripted testing is at the bottom and the unscripted testing is above. And what they're expecting is organizations to embed these type of tools to consider actual real world usage scenarios, obviously. So describe what those scenarios are and then actually execute those tests, but also experience-based testing. So based on the tester's intuition, people with domain knowledge, people with past experience. So if you're going to use AI tools in your quality system, and you're having people that are going to write test cases and actually test the AI tools, make sure that those people actually know what they're testing, right? They should understand what the AI system is, what it does and how it works, and have experience in what they can expect it, how it might fail. And some examples they give in terms of experience-based testing is error guessing, but also exploratory testing. For example, we're looking for hidden behaviors, but also the edge cases or unexpected user actions, but at the same time with error guessing, known failure patterns, past defects, about where bugs are likely to hide, for example. And obviously, right, with AI tools, I think we all know that risks can include, for example, hallucinations. So if you expect the system to be able to provide hallucinations, you must, or better consider that you implement some test cases where you could expect hallucinations, and not just one test run, but multiple inputs, and try to get it to hallucinate. Just try your best to see when it actually fails, and that might actually require some attempts. And I assume that the FDA will want to see that you've done your best to test it for its accuracy. And the same with completeness, right? We know that the answers that are generated by AI can just miss plain data. It can be incomplete. How do you know it? How complete the answers are that your AI system that you're using are generating? I haven't tested your system that much, but I can imagine also in the AI gap assessment tool, you feed it with a certain regulation. The AI does an interpretation of that regulation, but it means by no means that all the gaps that you're presented with are actually 100% of the gaps that might exist in the regulation. Obviously, it will do its best, but it can miss items, right? So how do you account for this? How do you test for this? And when you're relying on these tools to do your gap assessment for you, I think you should think about missing data. And the same with currentness. And currentness, I have run into various times. You do a quick search on ChatGPT or perhaps on Copilot, and you're trying to see, you're asking the AI certain questions, and it will just pull up data from older guidances, not even the most recent one. And then you start putting in additional questions. Hey, but have you considered this latest guidance? And then it says, no, this is still from the old guidance. And you're like, that's not the answer I needed. So also with tools that are specifically manufactured for quality and regulatory purposes, will have much better guardrails to prevent that from happening, but that doesn't mean it will never happen. So you still might want to do some verifications, and also the repeatability. If you ask it the same question twice, will it actually give you the same answer? And if you ask it 3 times, or if you change your prompt, or if you just start changing some of the other input data, what is the outcome of the device? So it's good to test those systems rigorously and think about how you can do that. And probably you will need in your organization people that have experience with these systems and know how to test them. And if you don't, then maybe you're not going to be able to validate the tool. I'll come back to your question, Diana, at the end. So the FDA, and I think there's a lot of simplification in the guidance. So where the previous guidance had this very extensive approach to writing down all the requirements to the system, if it was high risk, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. FDA scrapped a lot of it, so that's nice. But instead, what they expect is you to define the intended use and consequently do a risk analysis. Based on the risk analysis, ensure that you do the right kind of test to test whether those risks can actually come to life. Determine what the issues are that you might find in the software, and consequently, based on those issues, implement the controls in your process. So coming back to the question of Jose, and also your previous talk, Miguel, with do we need a human in the loop? Preferably, maybe not. Are we going to be able to convince FDA that we don't have a human in the loop when there's a risk? I doubt it somehow, but I guess time will tell with how good these AI systems will actually become. And I hope that at some point they'll surpass human performance and we don't have to rely on a human in the loop. And maybe we can just do more risk-based monitoring rather than approving every single piece of text that comes out of an AI system. And again, FDA is going to put emphasis on who performed the testing. And as explained earlier, be aware that you should have people that have that experience to do this type of tests. And then finally, there should be a review and approval of the final test results. I've tried to pull together a small overview what that looks like. I'm not sure if this is 100% accurate. How I understand it is you have the tool, you define the intended use. Based on intended use, you describe the functionalities. And I guess, again, it's some sort of the requirements as we were used to. And then based on the requirements, you assess the risks. And you come to a whole list of the risks associated with the device. You run the test cases to exploit the risks. You see how bad the risks are and what are the controls you need to implement as an organization. And obviously, the first control I identify in my example is a human in the loop. But what that looks like now you would implement it, I guess, could depend. And then finally, you end up with a final test and mitigation report, which is your ultimate tool validation. So this doesn't just apply to AI systems, just to be clear. It is the new tool validation guidance issued by the FDA. So it goes for all software tools. But I guess they amended it to be a little bit more specific also for the use for AI systems. And overall, I'm quite happy with the new guidance. At the same time, it will challenge organizations to think about how they want to these type of tools prior to using them. And that's pointing back to the ISO 145. If you're not validating them today, you need to validate them yesterday in order to be compliant. That's, I guess, the main outline of what I wanted to talk about. So maybe a little bit quicker than the other presentations, but short and sweet maybe. Ivo, maybe some questions?
Yeah, so Diana asked the question that if we treat the AI output as a really bad draft and we double or triple check it, and then we have humans in the loop, do we still need validation?
I think so. Yeah, I don't think you're going to convince FDA otherwise. If you're using it as part of your quality management system, I mean, it's not different than using any other quality system tool in your system that needs validation.
Amandeep?
Yeah, I do have a question. My question is with the alignment of at 2026 deadlines. So this question is like, does this AI tools provide any transparency log that we can show to notified bodies to explain the logic?
Yeah, it's actually true, right? It might not be high risk under the Annex 3 or under Annex 1, but it would still be an AI system, and AI systems will need to comply with Article 50. And Article 50 explains that if the output is generated by AI, you might want to be transparent about the fact that they were generated by AI, and you might want to make sure that those systems are robust So yes, to some extent, I think there's, and I'm just trying to read the article out of the top of my head. I can't really say it exactly as it's written in Article 50, but I think most AI systems that generate text require that level of compliance with state-of-the-art standard, technical standards, whatever that may mean, because it's not defined.
Well, if I can jump on there, because it's quite interesting conversation on do the eQMS AI system impacts the security of the device, and can it become a high risk because of that connection to the device? Because if you are shaping the design of the device, how much you can say that you are not impacting the safety of the device? Okay, it's not the real-time safety because the device will work by itself, but the shaping of it. And I'm sharing this because, of course, we are too far from discussing those practical cases for concrete guidance, but I'll not.
It's a good question, right? And where do you define the boundaries of the device? Is the boundary of the device the physical boundary of this is the piece of software and that is what is regulated? Or is it all the documentation that comes with the software? And if you consider the part of the documentation, part of the software, and the AI system could be considered a safety component under the AI Act, the whole system will become high-risk AI.
Because again, we cannot forget that when we speak about AI covers not, when we speak about the model is a matrix. The point is that matrix was created throughout machine learning practice, and the machine learning is the factory of the AI. So how a QMS is different from what it was a machine learning process that led to a matrix that is now being deployed in what we call a model. But the pipeline is what led that to be AI. So that matrix was created by machine learning. And again, the same way I think what you present on FDA is also a bit of how much that will be enforced is always my point with a lot of regulations. I think there is concrete risks, concrete things in place that make sense. I think we are really far from being able to enforce things. So the AI to AI world is where I see these things settle in 10 or 20 years. At this stage, I think we'll just be a bit fuzzy of people complying, people not complying, and probably nobody cares at the level that should be really the case.
I know that notified bodies have started a European project together, and I think it's on the NobelCap. I don't think all the current packages are still out. If you go to the NobelCap website, I tried it prior to this session because I actually wanted to get a hardline reference to what they state on the website. I'm going to share the link in a second.
Which project, by the way?
Give me 1 second. NobelCap EU. So if you go to the website, I'll share.
No, I know. We work with them. That was just to understand which project you mentioned.
This one, right? You work with them because I think maybe you know better than I do because there's a few. If you go to there's a few working packages, and I know that in one of the working packages that was set out was also a request when it was public to start development of tools for the site of the body to be able to review the technical documentation in an automated fashion. But I'm not sure.
No, I think that was a bit more far. There was a call that was just a European project that was selected in February to do this digitalization of notified bodies. So I lost it. So I know I don't know who went, but I was putting together that with the NobelCap consortium. That's why I was asking with the project. But we'll see a lot of things. And you have notified bodies already using AI. Scarlet is the most known because they advertise, but the others are also using AI tools.
Just like the FDA. Maybe we should start auditing our bodies, see how they validated those tools.
I totally hear. Jose had a question in the chat before Priya raised her hand. So maybe Jose or a comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
So it was just the idea when we were discussing if there should be human in the loop for the validation. So I think why it matters is until the point where you don't have a impact for a patient or at least the user. Of course, it can have an automated process, iterations, even agentic iterations. But at some point, you would expect, also me as a patient, I would feel a lot more reassured if a human has looked at the latest update for the software that is going to be used to decide the dosage of the drug that I'm getting or the in vitro diagnostic that I'm taking or any other application. And it's not a fully automated system. But you could have you could create a very efficient overall process by having maybe 90% of that happen out in an out way, and just having the final check done by a team.
Thoughts, right? Yeah, it does make sense. But I also have my concerns, right? If you ask an AI system to check and verify whether the doses that you're getting as a patient, your medication is correct, and the human might rely on the source of the AI system, then where's ultimately the responsibility if the dose is actually incorrect? It's a scary thought as well. But at the same time, can we trust humans? Is the question. I don't have a good answer.
Yeah, sure. In the end, the one point maybe that, so it's perhaps a bit more philosophic, but the human can be accountable and cares also about his own accountability, whereas the machine does not have the same sense of accountability. It's not worrying about getting fired, going to jail for doing a bad job. So in that sense, there's always a certain level of care that the human, even with their own limitations, are going to place upon the job and deliver beyond the deadline if it needs to be.
I tried writing an article about liability together with a lawyer, I think about a year ago. I didn't understand any of it. It's such a complex world when you go actually into the liability question. So I'm also not sure how that works on AI. It's complex, and it's a real different ball game, than just regulatory.
But in the end, with a human, you always somebody has to sign off on the release of a medical device. Imagine it's a laser for surgery. If the whole process is automated on redesigning this system, let's say you change the supplier, the AI took care of all of this automatically, then you are only relying on the liability of the individuals that own that AI or that control that AI. So you are 1 or 2 or 3 degrees removed, and at some point there is a dilution of the liability. If you are the engineer or the project manager that had to sign off on that release, then you have a direct personal responsibility to control that everything is consistent. And to me, it makes sense to keep always a human in the loop, at least in that final stage.
I agree.
So I don't see it coming anytime soon, or even that we are able to sell it to people. That's here's the product. It's.
I think there are already some products, right, that cut out the human in the loop. So, for example, Oxipit, they'll get just acquired by Sectra. They actually they sort out a number of the X-ray reviews, where they say a human does not need to look at it because they claim that their performance is so high. So that's already being used in clinical practice. And I also remember the fundus camera that's being used in the US, which is screening in the GP practice, where the people might have a retinopathy. And if people are clear from retinopathy, they are not getting a referral to the physician, to the ophthalmologist. If they do have it, then they get a referral to the ophthalmologist. And I think we'll see a lot of application. These are just the 2 I know of, but I'm pretty sure there's already more.
For image comparison, for sure, this has been demonstrated that AI can get a higher rate of the correct positives, lower rate of false positives, and false negatives.
That's interesting to see where it goes. I guess you had some question too?
Yeah, sorry. I was thinking about your slide. Your last slide you just showed about the risk-based validation with reference to the CSA which FDA released, and I think it's true for any other regulatory guidance documents available. It comes down to the intended use of the system also, right? The system can have a lot of features and functionalities, if you will, but then how are you trying to use that system? That is what dictates how much validation you're going to do. As an example, I was thinking about a regulatory information management system, which is a standalone repository. You can just use it for, tracking your registrations, collaborating as a centralized place, right? But if you hook it up to your GTM or global trade management system, which kind of gives you information about where to ship or not to ship the product based upon the approval, then in that case, that system becomes high risk because it is telling you based on the product registrations and licenses where the product. So,
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for your comment. I agree. Couldn't agree more. Obviously, it's intended use, and it's not that new. I think what FDA has scrapped is just very traditional approach of defining all the requirements and then do risk assessment and leading back to more requirements, etc. I think it's just a bit of a shortcut, just to test what risks exist, and then based on what risks actually make sense, implement controls. So it's
risk-based makes more sense, and it's less burdensome for any manufacturers.
Except when I read how they define this whole test case protocols and what they expect in terms of test scripts, that just seems a lot more complex. But let's see.
Yeah.
You also had a question?
Yeah, please. Actually, I already put one question in a chat box. My question is related to semantics, because we know in regulated industries we have a different teams, and so every team approach the same thing in a different way. Engineer people think in some different way. Clinical people know, okay, this is the safety of the patient. So my question is like how we see the confidence level of this semantic matches.
I think this is a better question for Miguel to answer than for me. Maybe it's a bit too technical for me. Maybe.
No, Eric was the one showing up the similarity, so he's probably
Okay,
quite
so
no limitation of that search or not. But yeah, but it's interesting because we moved from a world that you expect if you search for a certain word that everything that has that word appears, from something that stops to be deterministic at a level that you can ensure for sure that you're getting. Again, is more deterministic because in the end it's still an algorithm. It's not random, but it may not show everything that you expect. But Eric, you show exactly that kind of search that you run, and how reliable you should trust that or not.
Yeah, it's a fair question, but I think we've come to a point that you can rely on these similarity scores at least. Fair deal. There are benchmarks out there, and any off the top of my head, but there are plenty. And there's also for similarity matching, there's a lot of models and from a lot of different providers. You can use tiny models and large models and everything in between. So it's not a black and white answer. Like there's a lot of gray area, but. Like if you go to one of the larger providers and select one of their better models, then I think you can rely at least on similarity matching. That's also the reason why we offer both keywords and similarity. Sometimes similarity is the better match, especially if you have a name or a specific longer sentence that you know you're sort of looking for in a specific area, then similarity matching is very powerful. But obviously keyword search or at least keyword matching and exact matching is here to answer a little bit.
That raised me a point that is interesting to discuss. What was the last time that you went to the second page of Google?
A long time
now,
ago.
And I'm saying this because as human in the loop, there's some questions raising here. It's like, okay, you are just trusting a human that in the end, are they just using AI and being lazy? The reality, and is what Leon, you're saying, that the biggest challenge is that humans in the end, they tend to trust AI. So you will trust the similarity, you'll tend to trust AI summaries. And that's the issue when we are not designed to untrust something that fails 1% of the times. So we get to trust these AI models, and a lot of, for me, why we trust these AI models is because they speak like humans. Because if they're just giving you numbers like the old ones, you probably will not trust them so easily. And that's the thing, like how you really have the human in the loop not to fail more than the agent.
So if I maybe can give a little comment there.
Go ahead.
So on the Google search analogy, the results that you get defaulted for any specific query are also based on what other people have clicked on and how many links in the internet point to that particular page. So Google is actually relying on the collective intelligence of humans to give you the most relevant result for your particular search. So if you are searching for, a cake with strawberry and apple and cinnamon, it's going to look for whatever other people who are looking for similar things or exactly the same thing have clicked most often. And in this way, actually, the operation of LLMs is similar as well. It's trained on data, and from the starting point when it's starting to work, let's say on a design history file, and the full QMS is working also on data that it was trained for, and that was built by human intelligence. If it then runs a long time just on its own intelligence with less and less input from humans, we can all imagine that there is a higher and higher risk of trailing off, right? So very important to have guardrails and to have that human-in-the-loop involvement to avoid that. At least that's my perception at the moment. I cannot imagine that we go into the full AI mode. Also because of that, we get good results now because the training data up to now has been mostly human generated by teams of humans with complementary skills and many discussions that happen in order to increase the quality of the body of knowledge that is used to train and to test and validate. Does that make sense? Or
no, if you can jump in, that's why we're really careful on launching AI on our site, because again, we use AI daily, so it's not that we are against AI on many tools, but the reality is that if I really want to put my name behind AI model, I really believe that a lot of the work will be on how we tailor models that will be trained and fit for purpose, because they use the right data for the right purpose. And these big models will be just part of the orchestration of things. They will not be the ones that you'll trust. So they'll be probably the ones that make it the wording proper, doing proper things, but we will rely on models that really rely on good data. And that's the issue when you have these big models training with all the junk that is out there in the internet. Try to do classification of a software with AI model. Like he clients every day coming with, but we can do a transition, do a class 1 and do a transition. So this what you mentioned, Leon, of outdated data and so on. So these things that they get lost because the corpus of knowledge is not stable. So it's a good example where things diverge a lot with those big models, and if you do not train it fit for purpose, you'll just get lost quite easily in many of stuff.
But the purpose itself could evolve, right? How do we control
it? It's okay. I think we should have a model that is good to define risk on probably what is pacemakers, and is trained on that body of knowledge and evolve from there. And we'll probably see in the future some companies that are providing API for what is the best model for doing AI for that specific purpose. And that's why I think we're still in the infancy on that, because it's the next stage where we really start building models that are fit for purpose and not just generic models that then we adjust to be able to do some things. And I said, what Eric is something we need to use because FDA is using, and is where the false negatives, let's say, or false positives, as I said, are acceptable. That is not a tool that you want to audit yourself to then give the certification in the end, but is a tool that definitely helps. But it's not a tool that you'll trust ultimately, but it helps. That's the point. AI helps, but there is a limitation where you can trust. As I say, is that friends that knows everything, there's a compulsive liar, and you cannot trust. So as long as you can fit them on your organization, I think you're good to go.
Yeah, you guys had the slide before that fast is useful and defensible is the most valuable, right? I think it kind of comes back to that. It's still useful always to have more efficient.
Elaine had a question as well.
Hi, everyone. I don't have questions. I'm coming from a regulatory affair background. I just want to chime in on 2 points here, just to share some insight over here. As we talked about earlier, like Joseph, Miguel, and everyone was really talking a lot about, can AI actually be able to be a one sort of true in that cases? And there is also the indications that say, because according to the ISO 13485, there is some kind of clauses mentioning that every decisions or things that we have on the record have to be at least have a 4 eyes principle. So in regards to that, of course, AI have no 4 eyes. But basically that might mean that, of course, we might need to think about whether there's a possibility to have human interventions, or maybe an AI is going to audit an AI in that cases, because if we are using a different models of the AI, maybe there's a possibility to understand that the model is thinking differently in that cases. So the gap that might be missing by the other AI can be caught by the other AI as well. So this is one point. And I think from the perspective, let's say from the risk approach, I think there was someone mentioning about what if we are using AI as, let's say, a diagnostic main technology for having solutions on that. So we need to also be aware that there's always the cases of single point failures that AI will make. In that cases, it has to be incorporated into the risk management and ISO 14971 in that cases. And of course, we're talking about also if it's a medical device software, of course, the AI Act as well. And of course, there are also some, let's say, supplementary application that is used, or let's say built not for medical device industry, but they are used in medical device industry. They have to comply with the CRA. So I think it's a cyber security. What does that mean? Or Cyber Resilient Act as well. Just to want to add some input here on that would be also interesting.
I think the Cybersecurity Resilience Act, I've read it recently and I've tried to understand it and see what the implications are. And it seems that anything outside of the scope of a regulated product, for example, a medical device or, I'm sorry, I'm getting tired by the end of the day. But I think aside from the AI Act or any other product regulation, EDS, I think if you're indeed making a device that is connected and is made available online and has connected components, if I remember correctly, might even need to undergo, well, at least need to be CE marked and need to undergo some kind of compliance verification prior to being put in use in order to comply with the CRA. But I'm not fully 100% clear if I'm still saying what I'm saying is still sensible. Yeah,
I recently joined a workshop and it was just today. It was totally about CRA. So mainly, Leon, you're correct. Medical device is not included as a part of the CRA scope. But what is interesting about that is that if you are selling a components which are originally not intended to be used in medical device, but at some point you was applying to a company which are using as a medical device as their components, so you're obliged to also in compliance with the CRA as well. And also all the software and hardware as well in that cases that's connected to the internet. I suppose they are also all in that scope as well. Is kind of very eye-opening in that cases because many kind of like interface between medical device and non-medical device. Because if we're talking about a medical device system, there's always both medical device accessory and also non-medical device as well, like some recorder they're using in that cases, some data devices they're using it. Sometimes they are not a medical device, but they're incorporating the medical device system. So that is a very interesting combinations there.
But this is quite, so we are doing it, we're launching now a project. We are working with the hospital on how to help them to manage all the compliance for procurement, because the reality, and what Leonard was saying, you will be any software will be similar. The point is where, is it AI Act or cybersecurity or a medical device? The only thing that hopefully that these changes will make sure is that you only need to go through a regulation. But if you are not in one, much probably you are in other, and that becomes the issue. How consumers, and when you think about the hospital, they tend to be a consumer. They can validate compliance at the scale because they may not rely only on the notified body, because they also need to comply with their own regulation, and this become a quite of a challenge down the road. So the product compliance, I think, will be one of the critical aspects. And this is where I think AI, talking with AI, and either we automate these or just making regulations for English to see. In Portugal, we say this probably does not make European level, just to pretend to be that we have something, but in reality we don't have it. And we still have an AI in the market that is competing with AI Scriber that's a class 2B, and the other is not a medical device, doing exactly the same intent purpose, and nobody cares. And this is a bit of my concern many of the times with this bunch of regulations, is that either we really, that's why I think we need to be a bit more pragmatic on adopting AI. So if you go into Leon with what you just presented, I'll just realize I'll not implement any AI tool ever, and that becomes the risk benefits. That probably we should have the perspective on the, okay, this will be risky, this will fail, But given the benefits, should I trust a human doing this or an AI machine at this level? And what should I go for in the end for the benefit of security, safety, patient benefits? And that I think we are still a point we are not discussing that. So we're still no failure, but the point is, okay, where failures are acceptable or not. And not just the risk, it's a risk benefit like we do for medical device. Probably we still need to apply into our own tools.
Just shared the ISO standards associated with artificial intelligence, also relevance to medical devices.
We've had lengthy discussions, so I actually provided my inputs together with some.
So you wrote, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but it was terrible. Literally, we actually.
Did you follow this process?
Yes.
I just actually got the standard today. I was looking through it, but maybe you can tell us a bit. What's your idea about this? Or?
Yeah, the whole problem that we had is in the development of the standard. So this easily gets complex. But from a foundational perspective, you have two streams in ISO and management system standards. One is based on safety. The other is based on organizational risk. And in the very first stages of development of 42001 and 23894, we were very strongly opposing to using the organizational part here, and we heavily tried to get the safety aspect in, because AI can have risks in regards to safety. We were put aside in the standard organization as literally as liars. By big tech, I will refrain from which organizations those were, but it were not fun discussions. We had big fights in the standards committees. We always voted against those standards. We provided a lot of input, and everything was wiped off the table by big tech. You have to imagine that what they do in big tech is they put forward all the representatives in all the countries worldwide. Just to give you an example, in our 27 member states in Europe, we saw that 7 of our member states had co-chairs for the AI standards coming straight from Huawei, which is a Chinese company, as we all know, and they are dominating our European standards organization around AI standards. It's just one example. We saw more than 8 representatives in Europe from Microsoft walking around, and these people do not tend to take safety as their leading point of view in standardization. So when the AI Act got developed by the European Commission and it was being put forward, the European Commission, you can look it up, it's the JRC, this is a research committee from the European Commission who actually evaluates the standards. They completely wiped away the 23894 because it was not considering risks sufficiently with regards to the safety aspects or fundamental rights for use of AI. And the same actually happened for 42001. I'm not saying it's not a useful standard if you find it useful in your organization, but it's safe to say that it doesn't take into account European values and the European considerations that we want to fulfill for AI systems. And still up to today, we have big discussions on this in our standards committee around with big tech organizations that become fairly unfriendly. And also, actually, weirdly enough, with our Dutch authorities, who say and continuously keep pushing, as long as there's no standard, any standard is better than no standard. And we just keep pushing back, but this is not the standard you want the European standards. And we're currently developing European standards. You can find them in JC21 and the working program, and they have an alternative standard for the quality management system, and they have an alternative standard on the developments for risk management that will be going to support the AI Act and compliance with the AI Act. And those are, but also here we face the same frustrations. Obviously, big tech doesn't like us to diverge from what they've done on international level. So also here in the voting, we see 3 weeks prior to a vote on a standard coming out, all of a sudden new members joining our committee and they vote against the standard. And then you start looking into who these people are, and they're all big tech representatives. It's not a pretty game.
But
political, yeah.
Very political.
So we find, well, the standard is now more focused on organizational risk, but not that much on safety. Yeah?
Exactly, but it's similar to what you see in ISO 27001. It considers you to what is your organization, what kind of risks is your organization. So if you are actually allowed to consider what your definition of risk is. because it can be the uncertainty on objective. If your objective is to make as much money as you want, then your risks are going to be, we're not making the kind of money. And that's your risk. And it can be acceptable, right? No one says that that's not an acceptable type of risk. So it's.
But on the other hand, if you develop a medical device that's going to incorporate software in one way or the other, you are, so at least we fall under the other IX 62304, right? Which does consider risk and safety.
Exactly. And that's also
so
why
that's the fallback. That's the only way I can see it.
If you look at EME 34971, this one, that's now being transitioned into TR, I think ISO TS 24971 part 2. That's going to be the standard. I'm not sure if the last one is a TR or a TS, but that's the standard for explaining how the 14971 can be applied to AI-enabled medical devices. And it's about to be published any moment now. Sorry, this is probably worth a whole different SaMD meetup. Yeah, it's an interesting field.
I think it's at the core of the question as well. Thank you, by the way.
Diana, you had a question as well.
Yeah, it's a question not as a rich person or an employee, but as a citizen. I just finished reading the book that I put in the chat. It's called AI Snake Oil, and it's not a technical book, but it's about AI and the lies and broken institutional society. But my question is like maybe to how can we just learn as a citizen more about how to be active in politics, because like a lot of our rights can be taken away or reduced, or maybe they're already not great. And I think the citizens can have like a lot of impact if we organize together and we have a voice to be heard by all different governments. So just like an open discussion that I would like to start. Off topic.
Sorry, Miguel, I'll hand it over to you. I wasn't aware, all the European standards that are being developed right now to support the AI Act, they have a public inquiry stage. Anyone can actually, for free, download a copy and provide their inputs. Just to hook up with your local standardization organizations in your country. In the Netherlands, it's NenConnect. Create a profile. You can do that for free when the AI standards are coming out for public inquiry, and that's going to happen in this year. You can access it and provide your input and provide your feedback. So if we want to stop big tech lobbyists and you want to provide your inputs, it's completely free and open to anyone.
No, I wanted to add a bit on that because so we also part of the standard committee sides as Portugal, so a small country in that sense, and we see different perspectives of things, of course, in many of these cases. And for instance, Leon, our country pushed a lot for 42001, and that boiled down to a challenge that I think is quite relevant to what we spoke today, is that when the standard is no longer a standard because you have multiple standards that cover the same stuff, what becomes a standard or not, and how an AI can really navigate in a world that requirements may be different. And a lot of what we push in Portugal, like in most of the companies, are small companies. Like we don't have the big tech making anything in Portugal, so they didn't care much to lobby from here. But in reality, is when we want to go to the US and to the EU, why we need to comply with two standards when we should have a single standards across things. And again, not three. Yeah, so not opposing to the reason, and again, quite agree that the European standards is the one that fits what we want for Europe. But at the same time, it becomes a kind of challenge of what you speak of the AI models will have a bias, and they may be confused what is the reality of things. So we are no longer in a world that we can just say, okay, this is the requirements. We'll start being in a world that cybersecurity requirements conflicts, AI requirements conflicts, and which are the ones that we should follow is something that's in the end is still a quite a human political activity to choose, not just an AI model to guide. And how we isolate this bias within the models is tricky. And not, when I say bias, is not the models are being trained with that bias. It's because naturally they are not done to navigate the biased worlds. They are navigated to a world where what they read is true. And beyond the garbage, we have bias, we have AI generating AI garbage, and this becomes, for me, the most problematic thing that we'll face when we don't even can agree as humans what is the standards to do such.
Just a short comment on that. So from point of view of auditing, for example, right, or as a 35, so just to be careful to separate the concepts. So we comply to regulations. So company complies to regulations, and a product or process conforms to a standard. And for example, the case of ISO 13485, it's just one way to cover part of the compliance to MDR or IVDR, right? So if you have a medical device, you want to commercialize this in the European Union, you are under the regulations. The regulations are the law, and that is coming out of the politics. It's coming out of the political agreement, and that sets forth a legal bondage, if you like. So if you want to commercialize, you have to comply with that law. And then one way to show that compliance, as far as the process of the company or the product, the process around the product goes, is to show conformity to that standard. And of course, then you have that situation. If you have several standards and they all have the claim that, yeah, if you conform to this standard, you are in compliance, then you get into that gray zone where each company is going to choose the standard that is most convenient and least effort to show that they are compliant, and not necessarily cover the safety and the interests of users, of the end users. So, but at least I think we have at least that kind of single source of truth, which are the regulations, and in this case, the MDR and the IVDR.
Which one, the existing one or the proposed change one?
Well,
at this stage, so
yeah, but so the MDR should evolve as well to exactly accommodate the reality that you have AI now embedded in most systems, or at least most processes that produce those systems and deliver them to people or calibrate them, etc. So, and then also to decide which standards make sense to demonstrate compliance. So conformity to which standards make sense to demonstrate compliance. So if I would have to say, I would say, yeah, that's absolute truth, and definitely it should be revised. It should evolve. And as citizens, yeah, we should expect that from our political representatives. So that's just my 2 cents. Yeah, I'm talking.
All right, I think it's time to wrap up, though I'm sure some of you would like to keep going until the early hours. Thank you everyone for attending, and especially the ones who are all still here. If you have any ideas for future topics, please send us an email, reach out via Slack or LinkedIn, whatever ways you can communicate with us. And I hope we can organize another round in 3 months, maybe sooner if there's lots of good ideas and people that want to present. And I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for organizing.